all agree that today's been an amazing day, yeah? We've learned a lot, we've had a good time, yes? Awesome, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you continuing to play full out. Is it all right if we keep this party going, yes? So, our next speaker is going to share an idea with you that is, and the first time I heard this, I was like, why don't more people understand that? And let me explain what I mean by that. If I tell you you can build a business using OPM, I'm telling you that you can build a business using other people's what? Money, right? We all know that. But if I told you that we could build a business using OPE, what does the E stand for? Equity, what else? Say again? Experience, energy, everything. Hear me, right? Isn't that a neat idea? Think about this for a second, right? You are an expert at something, correct? You have your strengths, correct? This is your lane. This is where you are the sexiest, correct? Excellent. And then you have other areas where other people are experts. You have other people's credit. You have other people's resources. You have other people's experience. You have other people's expertise. Does that make sense? What smart entrepreneurs do is they say, this is what I'm awesome at, but let me build my empire by leveraging other people's everything. In my business, if I need graphics done, do I do graphics? No, I leverage somebody else because I can't draw stick figures. I failed stick figures in the 3rd grade. And it's such a brilliantly simple concept that the first time I heard it, which was literally 10 minutes ago, I was like, why don't more people do this or understand this? So because I only learned about this 10 minutes ago, I am not an expert on sharing with you how you can build and grow and scale using other people's everything. The good news for you is that I know the woman who is an expert. Is it okay if I bring her on stage? It is. Just a little bit about her. She is a business owner herself. She's been a securities lawyer for the past 23 years. So she might know a thing or two about this game. And she is a scaling expert. And everything that she's going to share with you, she has learned and has lived. So she's sharing with you from experience. Can I bring her to the stage? Y'all still got some energy? Thank you. Y'all still got some energy? You know how we get it. We're standing up. We're putting our hands together. We're welcoming to the stage Bethany LaFlam. Thank you.
Go back. In case you guys think I'm an imposter, who came back to Peak Partnership this year just to be in the energy of Devon? I did. And can we just take 1 second to recognize the MFCP and MFM teams for what an incredible event this is. I am so grateful to be here with you all today. This is so exciting. I'm so grateful. All right, so who wants to learn how to practice safe SEC? Anybody? Yeah. You guys have been hearing from some really awesome speakers about how to attract and interact with investors. But my job is to help you stay compliant with the SEC when you do that. Deal? All right, awesome. So we're gonna learn about that, but first a little bit about me. So I'm the managing partner of Premier Law Group, as you all know, and I have my retreat business, Be to the Power of You, where I help syndicators like you scale your businesses and grow your businesses using OPE, other people's everything. My top passions, my #1 passion, of course, is my daughter, Mackenzie. And if I can just brag for a second, because if y'all have been on Bubbles with Bethany with me, you know we brag. That's what we do. So I'm gonna brag for a second. I have a teenage daughter, and she is hardly ever embarrassed by me. So, you know, we're gonna try to keep that streak alive today. My second passion is building my empire, right? One of the things that I'm doing actually to build my empire, we're gonna buy a friggin' hotel in Belize so I can have retreats for all of you to come learn how to scale your businesses. We're gonna do that with MFCP. Yeah. And the reason that I'm doing that is because my third passion is to help you build your empire. Okay? Awesome. So, Devon did a really good job of already explaining what OPE is. I could probably leave right now, but I committed myself to 30 minutes, so you gotta stick with me, okay? So when I was, pretty recently actually, I did this branding exercise, and it was the result of having gone through this really intensive visioning exercise, okay? And what I did was I mapped out what my empire, my extraordinary life would look like. And at the top of that, what I had was self-sustaining and self-perpetuating freedom. Freedom to, not freedom from, right? Freedom to work wherever I want. Freedom to work with whomever I want. Freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want, right? Sounds like a dream, but you know what? It's possible, you can do it, okay? And I work with my mindset strategist. Yes, I have a mindset strategist. And if you don't, you should. You should have one, okay? I think everybody here can agree after this whole weekend that mindset is key. All right, so I worked with her, and what we figured out together was that to build my brand, to create the things that I wanted to create in my empire, it had to really be authentically me, right? I had to embrace all the parts of myself and be authentically myself, okay? The problem, though, was that I was so busy doing all this other shit, right, that I didn't love, right? And it wasn't getting me closer to building my empire. It wasn't getting me closer to my extraordinary life. And frankly, it was a lot of stuff that I'm not that great at, right? And so I had to really examine that and figure out what even is my lane? What are my unique gifts and talents, right? What is the lane that I should be in? Yesterday, Emily told you guys all to write down the things that you love and the things that you're good at, right? Did you all do that? Who did that yesterday with Emily? Yeah, did you do it? That's your lane, my friends. That's your lane, okay? The things you're good at and the things that you love is your lane. And you get to do that. And you know what's really cool? What she told you yesterday was that is how you're gonna be truly happy. But you know what's really awesome? That's also how you are gonna be the safest when you're raising capital and building your empire, right? If you stay in your lane, you're gonna be happier, you're gonna be doing only things that you love, you're gonna be that much closer to building your extraordinary life, and you're gonna be safer. So it's kind of awesome when you figure out that something that's good for you actually feels good too, right? Can we all agree? Awesome, awesome. All right, so Robert Kiyosaki, you all heard of Robert Kiyosaki. Who's read that purple book? Everybody? Yeah. If you haven't, you should. Get that mindset strategist, then get the purple book, okay? Robert Kiyosaki says that to be truly rich, you need to be using other people's money. And he's right, he's right. But taking that to its next logical step, because last I checked, being rich is not necessarily the answer to being happy and living in your extraordinary life, living your heart's desire. Other people's money is one step. The next logical step then is using other people's everything, OPE, other people's everything. Figure out your lane that you're amazing at. Find other people, look around this room, by the way, all your other people that you want to build your empire, they're probably in this room, right? So when you figure out your unique gifts and talents, honor that. And when you meet somebody that you trust and respect and admire, figure out their unique gifts and talents and honor that. And then all y'all stay in your own lanes, okay? Stay in your own lanes. So if you imagine a competitive swimming pool, you know, with the red and blue lane lines that help the swimmers stay in their own lane, literally, right? Imagine if I were swimming in that pool and I decided that I was gonna cover my 100 yards going across the lane lines, right? I'd still be able to cover 100 yards. It's probably gonna hurt. I'm never gonna win that way, and I'm probably gonna piss off every other person in the pool, right? There's no way to win. And not only am I not gonna win if I do that, if I bump into them in their lane, they're not gonna win, right? So I know it seems obvious when you put it that way, so make sure that you go ahead and you stay in your own lane. All right. So what we're going to talk about today, though, I'm going to tell you about the top 3 questions that I get from syndicators. Brand new syndicators, experienced syndicators, all of the syndicators, right? I get the top 3 questions. But let's figure out first, what even is a security? Why does the SEC even care what you're doing? Why would they care? The reason that they would care is if you're selling securities. And a lot of you don't even know what that is. I've talked to a few people this weekend that were like, oh shit, I think I've been selling securities, calling it a joint venture. How many of you think maybe you've done a joint venture and you're thinking, oh, that might have been a security, right? If you are taking passive money from somebody who is expecting a return based on your efforts. Passive money, your efforts to get a return, you have sold a security. Even if it's just grandma and your uncle, even if it's only $15,000, if it's passive, it's a security, okay? Which means then that you've got to comply with securities laws. That's where I come into play, right? The Securities and Exchange Commission exists to protect investors from you. I exist to protect you from the SEC and from investors, okay? So what are your options if you sold securities? It's not a joint venture. And by the way, the Securities and Exchange Commission does not care if you call it a joint venture. You don't get to decide that. Your facts decide it, okay? But you have three options. You can either register the offering, like Microsoft, right? A public offering. Those usually aren't gonna work in a real estate situation because you don't have that kind of time and you probably don't have that kind of money. It's really expensive, takes a really long time. So that's usually not an option. You find an exemption, right? You can find an exemption. In most cases, in this room, it's probably gonna be a Reg D, 506B, or 506C. We'll talk about that in a second. Or number three, you're screwed, it's illegal. That's it, just three choices. So, let's choose option B. What do you think? Yeah? Okay, so what is that? So if you're selling securities, we're gonna find an exemption. Like I said, 506B and 506C. Actually, I'll let this one, you guys wanna take a shot of that one, you can have that for later. I won't read the whole thing. So this is the difference between 506B and 506C. The gist of it is, in 506B, you get to take non-accredited investors. Okay, that means if you want some friends and family to come in that don't maybe have over $1 million in net worth or 200,000 in income, you want them to be able to come into your deal, you can allow up to 35 of those. However, if you do that, you cannot advertise and generally solicit. And we're gonna talk a little bit about that a little bit later, but basically what that means is if you've talked about a deal here, you're not doing a 506B, okay? Because you don't have a close personal relationship with everybody in this room, and you can't show that you do. 506C is accredited investors only, but you can shout it from the rooftops, right? So what do you think that Aloha Fund is? Right? It's a C, because you've been seeing it all over the place, right? Exactly. So you can generally solicit or advertise. However, you do have to take reasonable steps to verify that those investors are in fact accredited. And you still have to make sure that everything you're saying is truthful and not misleading. Okay. So what are accredited investors? I alluded to that just a moment ago. That means you've had income of $200,000 or more for the last 2 years, reasonably expected in this year, again this year, or $300,000 if you want to count your spouse. Or $1 million of net worth, not counting your personal residence. Otherwise, everybody in California would be a millionaire, right? Yeah. So you can't count your primary residence. Now, there are a couple of other ways you could be counted as accredited. There's some licensing you can do, but these are the primary ways that we find accredited investors. All right. Now, here's the good news, and there's a really good rule in life. If you don't like your facts, then change them. Right? If you don't like your circumstances, change the facts. The SEC makes most of its determinations on a facts and circumstances basis, which means that they're going to take a look at the totality of what you've got going on and figure out whether or not you've violated securities laws. So if you think, oh, you know what, I'm not raising enough money and I don't have enough investors to really deal with doing a whole PPM and all this other stuff and it's too expensive or whatever it is. If you think that's true, then change your facts. Make all of the people that are involved in the deal become active. Make it a joint venture. And a lot of you have called me and I've told you, you don't need me. You can make this a joint venture. You don't need me, it's not a security. Right? But if it is a security, it's a security regardless of what you call it. So, you don't like your circumstances, change your facts. There we go. All right, finally, I'm gonna tell you about the top 3 questions that I get from syndicators. I've gotten this one probably 16 times today. Okay? How do I legally pay capital raisers? So if you were here last year, you heard me say, stop calling yourselves capital raisers, you're co-sponsors. All right, I know I'm just leaning into it at this point. I'm never gonna get everybody to stop calling themselves capital raisers, and you're not actually necessarily always gonna be co-sponsors. I talked to a few of you about some other options today as well. So I'm leaning into capital raisers, so we won't go through that exercise again. However, one thing you need to know is in order to get paid for being a capital raiser, you have to find an exemption to being a registered broker-dealer with FINRA. not a real estate broker, a registered FINRA broker-dealer. That is how you're allowed to get paid to raise capital. That's it, transactions-based compensation. And that could be cash, it could be equity in the deal, it could be a car, whatever it is, it's compensation. If the compensation is based on whether or not or how much money you raise, that is transactions-based compensation. And you are not allowed to get it, right? So how do you get paid then? I mean, obviously it's a pretty valuable thing. Yesterday, a bunch of people raised their hand, right? And said, my biggest hurdle is capital raising, right? The biggest hurdle is capital raising. So how do you get paid? Because you want to incentivize people to raise capital for your deal. Number one way, be a co-sponsor, be a partner. If you all were here for the investor relations panel yesterday, they were on point. And I tell you, every time I go and listen to any investor relations panel that I'm not on, I get a little nervous about what they're going to say, right? But they were spot on. Vanessa Alfaro, she came up and she said, if you're going to be a capital raiser, you need to know everything about that deal, right? If you're going to really raise capital, you should know about what you're telling your investors. So you should know what everybody's doing. Now that does not mean, by the way, hey Bethany, we heard you say stay in your lane. Yeah, stay in your lane. But you should know what's going on in the other lanes, right? And if you are a capital raiser and you are a true partner in the deal, you've probably done some diligence. Or else what are you doing? You might have had to deal with the lawyers, that's a job, right? So if you be a real partner when you're a capital raiser, that's fine, you can get a cut of the deal. Now you still, even if you're a partner, cannot get paid based on how much you raise. You still cannot get paid based on how much you raise. I'm gonna have 3 people ask me after this, yeah, but what about, can I get paid if I raise 2 million? No, you can't. You can get paid for the other jobs you're doing. Substantial duties is what the SEC says. So what is substantial duties? One of them is, of course, you could be investor relations, but that does not mean just calling up your friends that you brought into the deal, make sure they're not pissed off, right? That means creating the reports. That means doing what Vanessa said, understanding the whole deal, taking a look at the underwriting. You should know what's going on in your deal if you're a capital raiser, and then you've earned that GP interest. All right, so being a co-sponsor is one way. Another way that I've talked to a lot of you about is you could actually create a fund of funds. And so a fund of funds, what that is you go out and you raise capital and you invest it in other operators' deals. So you're not a manager in the deal, you're not a co-sponsor, you're just investing it straight into someone else's deal. Okay, there are some restrictions on that though. You can't just start doing it. You can't just throw it into an SPV and call it a day. A fund of funds has some regulations, okay? So one of those regulations is statewide, is state specific, right? You have to still follow one of the exemptions, 506B or 506C, yes. But you also are gonna be considered an investment advisor. So you have to find an exemption from having to register in your state where you sit as an investment advisor. So each state is different, but if you do that, then you can raise a fund and you get paid at the fund level, at your fund level. This is not a way around getting the sponsors or the operators to pay you. They still cannot pay you. But what you can do is you can negotiate because you have buying power now. You have a whole fund, you're not coming in at the minimum 100,000. So you can say, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna be a big check writer. And what do you guys do? When you guys are raising money, what do you do with big check writers? Anything, shout it out. You please them, right? That's right. You give big check writers what they want, within reason, right? So you could create a special class just for big check writers and say, we're gonna give you 1 point more, a higher pref. We're gonna pay you first. We're gonna give you a higher split. We're gonna waive fees, whatever it is, right? And then you get paid off the delta for the services you're providing to your investors at the fund of funds level. Now, I recommend highly that you do not set up a fund of funds strictly to raise money for a single deal. The SEC is not stupid. You don't want to look like it's a disguised commission for raising for a single operator, okay? So you want to make sure that whatever they're giving you as a better pref doesn't turn out to just be 2% of what you raised, right? I always joke that some of the smartest people I went to law school with, they work at the SEC. So it's not like, government workers. No, they're paying attention, they know what they're doing, and they know all the tricks. All right, so you have to really legitimately be running a fund of funds. You have to really be providing value to your investors. One of the things that you'd be doing, you're doing diligence on the operators, right? That's something that's important. You're negotiating maybe a better position. You're giving them diversification that they might not have gotten with their same 100,000. You're getting them into a deal they might not have been able to get into with their same 100,000. So you're providing value. And so in exchange for that, the investors are going to say, you can take a fee, right? Or a promote, whatever that is. So that is another way that you can get paid if you are a capital raiser and you don't want to be an operator. But that's it. So this is unpopular opinion time. If you don't have a fund of funds, if you are not a registered broker-dealer, and if you are not an actual partner, a co-sponsor in an active syndication, then you, my friend, do not have an investor list. You just have a contact list. They're not your investors. And when they invest in a deal, they become investors of the company in which they invest. So things to remember, okay? Which is why a lot of people like to go the fund of funds route, right? They want to keep that circle tight. All right, so that's question number one. Question number two that I get, okay, what can I say on social media? Less is more. Less is more. Okay, if you're doing a 506B, I recommend you stay off social media about your deal. If you want to talk about what you had for dinner or that you're at Peak Partnership or how much you love Houston, fine, that's great. You can do value add, you can do educational content. Do not talk about your deals at all. Even if you're not outwardly asking for money, you should stay off social media about your deals. It's not good enough to just say, oh, I didn't ask for money, or we're just doing a walkthrough or whatever. There is this thing called conditioning the market, and you don't want to do that. So conditioning the market is basically anything you're doing online or publicly to drum up excitement with investors. So you have to think about, what's the purpose of your post? Is it really to educate? Is it really to build your brand? That's okay. But if it's really to drum up investor excitement for a current deal, then you should stay off social media about it. Now, if you have a 506C offering, some people think anything goes if you have a 506C offering. That is not necessarily true. You can advertise, and you can generally say, you can actually say, invest in my deal, please, right? If you have a 506C deal. But what you need to be careful of is saying anything that's either untrue. Of course, I know any of you, if you're not, you wouldn't be here if you were gonna say things that were untrue. But be careful of things that might be misleading without some more context, right? If it needs a bunch of disclosures or disclaimers on it, your posts are really short. It's not a whole big pitch deck or business plan. It's not a PPM. So you just need to be careful that if I say this, am I going to be misleading the public in some way, right? And somebody said it yesterday, and forgive me that I don't remember who said it. It was brilliant, which is, I think it was the branding guys actually. And they said, if you confuse, you lose, right? But actually, in this case, if you confuse, the best thing that could happen is they don't invest. Because if they invest and they're confused about the deal, guess what's going to happen when it comes time to do distributions or for an exit? They're going to come look into you because they didn't understand the deal, right? And who are they going to call? You heard Melissa say it yesterday. They're going to call you as the capital raiser. They're going to call you, right? So just make sure that you're very clear in your messaging on social media. And one of the things that we do is we actually do training on social media because it's a whole new world now, right? You've got a website and you've got all the different social media outlets and whatever. And so we provide training, but we also will review it to make sure that you are compliant. So we want to make sure that you stay safe out there. So less is more on social media. All right, top question number 3. Okay, I have a 506B deal. I want to let my family come into the deal, right? What do I do? How do I develop that substantial pre-existing relationship that is required for a 506B deal? All right, there are actually 8 steps. The SEC has actually given us some guidance on this, and if anybody who doesn't already have that, we actually can provide you with a written form of the 8 steps. If you go comment on my YouTube, any video you want, comment on my YouTube channel, 8 steps, Peak Partnership 2023, with your email address, and we'll get you the 8 steps. But we'll go over that really briefly now. So how do you establish a substantial pre-existing relationship? Well, the first thing is it's quality over quantity, right? There's not like, oh, if I've known them 3 months, then it's fine. I've called them 3 times, then it's fine. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It is very possible that someone you met Thursday at the party and spent this whole weekend with developing a relationship, it's possible that you could develop a substantial enough relationship to have them involved in another 506B deal, not a current deal. It's got to be a pre-existing relationship, right? So anybody you met here today or this weekend is not going to be an eligible investor for a current 506B offering that you have. Sorry to tell you that. okay? But another thing that you can do is keep good records. Keep good records. How many of you in here use really good CRM or investor portals to keep good records? Oh, more of you. I need to see more hands next time. You guys need to be keeping really good records of how you've communicated with people. And your CRM, just make a note. We had a Zoom call this day. I sent an email that day. We had coffee this day. We talked about, whatever, the family and the kids. There's a questionnaire you can use to have, and I highly recommend it. It is included in the 8 steps that I'm going to give you. There's a questionnaire. Ask them. Get to know about what they want. Yesterday you heard some people talking about really get to know investors. Don't just go ask them for money. Get to know them, right? Establish that relationship. You should be doing that anyway. In a 506c, you're probably going to have to do that to get their money anyway, right? Eventually. So ask questions. What are your investing goals? What's important to you? Are you looking for something that's long-term hold? Are you looking for cash flow? Do you want upside? What is it that you want? You should know that, right? Because here's what happens. The past few years have been this dream world, right? Where we all could rely on what we like to jokingly call the good deal defense. So even if you screwed something up, but everyone made money, probably no one's gonna know, right? I'm not saying break the law in a good market. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that when people lose money, that's when they have their lawyers start looking for holes. What did you do wrong that could help me get my money back from you, right? So don't make it easy for them, right? Just follow the 8 steps. And you can do, well, the records are going to be really important. And here's one thing I like to tell people though. So I talk about this substantial pre-existing relationship, right? But, and I had not said this before, and then last year I said it, and I had people coming out to me like, are you freaking kidding me? I've left hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table, so I'm going to tell you now. You actually can accept referrals in your 506B deals. Right? So if I'm talking to you and I have a relationship with you and you're telling me about your deal, I'm like, this is an awesome deal. And you know what? My sister's looking for a deal like this and she always invests in everything I invest in. Could I share this with her? Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? She should call you, right? I shouldn't be pitching for you. She should call you. But you can accept my sister even though you don't have that relationship with her. Why? Because the rule is that you can't generally solicit or advertise. And you can't let me go generally solicit or advertise on your behalf. But if I didn't do those things, then you can accept that investor. Now, what can't you do? You can't pay me, though, for bringing that investor to you, right? We're back to the broker-dealer thing, okay? So, you can accept referrals. That does not mean you should tell your friends and family to go blast this out on social media for you. Like I said, you cannot let anybody else generally solicit for you. So that's a fine line, so use your judgment there, okay? (506B), yeah, the one where you cannot generally solicit or advertise. 506C, you can scream it out here. You can tell them about your deal right now if you have a 506C, right? All right, so 3 more tips. Make sure you do stick to the 8 steps, and I'm gonna tell you, 8 steps makes it sound easy. Right? And it's not. It's actually a fair amount of work. You really have to get to know somebody. So do that. Make sure to differentiate if it's between a syndication and a blind pool fund, only because the SEC does that. So the 8 steps that I'm talking to you about right now, the SEC actually gave us an opinion letter. They gave us information. And they don't always do that. They don't always make it so easy. But they did this time. But they did make a distinction that it was a syndication, not a blind pool fund. It doesn't mean that you can't establish the relationship. And there are some situations where if you have an ongoing fund, you actually can get to know somebody and establish the relationship and wait 6 months and then let them come into a deal later. So there's some nuance here, right? So don't worry about memorizing all this. We got you. That's okay. Focus primarily on relationship quality. It's not, like I said, it's not quantity, it's quality. Really know them. All right, you guys want some free stuff? Who wants free information? Woo! Anyone? All right, you get your free Practicing Safe SEC guides here. Go ahead and scan that. Awesome. And so now, here's what we're gonna do. You guys, who was at the party Thursday night? Oh, right? And you're gonna go make it rain. There we go. You guys ready to go practice Safe SEC now? Yeah, I'm gonna go back in case you didn't get the QR code though. There we go, in case you didn't get it. Awesome. Thank you, you guys are all awesome. All right, I have 1 minute, I'll take a question, go ahead. Do I have a website? This will take you there. There's no Wi-Fi. Super. Okay. It is premierlawgroup.net. Premierlawgroup.net. All right, and you can meet me after and meet my team after, Suzanne, and we have the QR codes outside. So if you guys want to, we can hook you up there. The Wi-Fi's been super. All right, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Excellent. More for everybody. Love it.